I run my own business, Polaris Media. We're a maritime and engineering specialist public relations firm. Is this your business? And I said, yeah. He says, is it your mortgage on the line? I said, yeah. As soon as I walked into that shipyard, I was just hooked on the maritime industry. Get around people you can learn from. We then started working in Lithuania, China, in India, in America, 100 different maritime businesses. This isn't your best. I'd be like, huh? Get your skills in your 20s, learn at other people's expense, if you like, and you need to develop emotional maturity. The Lambo lifestyle, whatever it is, that can wait. It's totally naive to think that every client is going to work out. Every employee is going to work out. America, to me, is the most exciting country in the world, is the most entrepreneurial country in the world, and that is the essence of its greatness, because China has become this maritime superpower. Some Chinese shipyards individually are building 70 ships in a year. Help to run the Chicago Propeller Club, which is maritime industry networking, and that exists to recycle opportunities within the maritime community. We need these best minds to come and work in maritime. I'm writing an updated version at the moment, an American version called Shores of Freedom.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Red Now Podcast. And before we start, I just want to do a quick reminder that we publish each second Monday at 7 a.m. So you can kickstart your Monday with some advice from our guests. And today, with no hesitation, I would like to present you to my new guest, Ben Pinnington. How are you, Ben?
Very well indeed, Mike. How are you?
Good. So I want to ask you, so what do you actually guys do? What you're like focused on? I know that you're in maritime industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you are guys doing?
Sure. So I run my own business, Polaris Media. We're a maritime and engineering specialist public relations firm. I'm a trained journalist by profession. So I've worked in the media since 1997. So
oh, wow.
You probably weren't even born then, Mike.
True.
And I remember, actually, I was thinking on the way here that when I was at journalist college in England, way back in 1997, there was very little talk even about the internet and how newspapers were going to develop websites. And it just shows really how particularly the newspaper industry was really not prepared for the tech revolution. I mean, we were training to be newspaper journalists, and we weren't really given any great instruction on, marketing online. It was just, straightforward, as it had been for decades, how to write and public affairs and having to be aware of law and defamation, which is very interesting to me now because you see this proliferation of information online, particularly here in America, this whole debate around freedom of speech. And whereas as a journalist, we were taught in Britain, you had to be super careful what you wrote, because
Really?
if you got it wrong, the newspaper would be sued for inaccuracies or defamation or whatever. And it seems now that people can write almost whatever they want on social media. They can drive a coach and horses, so to an extent, through some of the legality that we learned as journalists. So the industry has changed fundamentally from when I first entered it.
So, and you're in maritime industry, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your company and what your guys focused on?
So my company, we'll probably say a bit more about myself and my journey. So my dad was a BBC journalist for BBC Radio Liverpool. So the Merseyside public had the dubious pleasure of waking up to the sound of my father's voice. For many years, he was a morning Merseyside presenter. So I was very interested in news and current affairs. So when I finished university, I'd studied politics at university and went to journalist college, wanted to get into journalism, got my first job in newspapers, working in regional newspapers in the northwest of England. But the pay was absolutely atrocious.
Really?
So I didn't really want to stay. It was so bad. But the thing is, the quid pro quo was you're getting world-class training. And so for me, when I worked in local papers, it was like the Beatles in Hamburg, because we just had to write and write and write. And the editors would throw the copy back at you if it wasn't any good, which most of the time when I was starting, I thought I was a good writer when I went in there, but I didn't know how to write for newspapers. So I had to learn that skill. And it's a very, very difficult skill to master, what makes news, how to write with pace and accuracy. And so that was sort of my Beatles in Hamburg period, where I was just writing and writing. I can't believe how much I used to write every day. And in those days, it was, you did the commute, you went to work, you were writing 9 till 6. And it was great camaraderie. And a lot of the people that I trained with went on to work for the Nationals and great stuff. So I didn't want to stay in newspapers. I was frustrated with how much I was being paid. And also my buddies were going on to work for big regional newspapers and then Nationals. I wanted to do something really good. So this job came up working for the Conservative Party, which is the equivalent of the Republican Party in America. And I was only, I think, 25, and I got a job as regional press officer for the Conservative Party. And that was my first big break, because then I was dealing with nationally famous politicians. I was organising events for Margaret Thatcher, Theresa May, who became Prime Minister, William Hague, who was leader of the opposition at that time. And I think I organised about 100 shadow cabinet tours to the northwest of England for the 2001 general election. And I really enjoyed campaigning. And after the 2001 general election, I went to work in the Scottish Parliament for the 2003 Scottish Parliament elections, and worked for the leader of the party in Scotland and his number two, a delightful aristocrat called James Douglas Hamilton, who'd been a Scottish Office Minister. And so I was working very closely with the politicians in that job. And I really sort of learnt that when you're writing for a client, you have to listen to their voice. It's like being a musician. You have to tune in to how somebody wants to present themselves in a press release to the media. And I found with these two personalities, David McCletchie and James Douglas Hamilton, who both now sadly passed away, but they were such different personalities. One was very diffident, and the other was much more sort of assertive and quite aggressive. So they wanted to write, they wanted to communicate in a very different way. So what I really learned there, I spent a lot of time crafting these press releases and speeches, thinking, are they going to like this? Or are they just going to throw it back at me? So that was something that was very helpful to me in politics. And I was then approached to run the campaign, the Northwest Says No campaign against regional devolution in the northwest of England in 2004. And through that campaign, I met somebody who became my mentor and also my boss, a guy called Len Collinson, who's also sadly now passed away. But Len was one of the most respected people in the northwest of England, so Manchester, Liverpool area. And Len asked me to run the press office for this business pressure group called the Forum of Private Business, which represented small to medium-sized firms across Britain. And that's where I really got a taste for business. I didn't know a lot about business, and I was speaking to business owners every day. And I found it very inspiring to speak to these entrepreneurs who were saying, yeah, I've remortgaged my house so my manufacturing business can, keep going. And I thought, I wish I had a job that was that important, And so I found I had a real taste for business. And Len, who was the boss of the Forum of Private Business, he said to me, Ben, and I hadn't really met anyone like him before, but he wanted to improve me. And so he was always challenging me. And we used to have these long conversations, because he was a great conversationalist. So you have these long conversations. And I found that he was sort of coaching me And he picked me up on things I was saying. And it was just an education to look, because he was like in his 70s by that point, and he was a self-made man, a multi-millionaire in Liverpool, where I'm from in the UK, and literally had a couple of clients only when we started out. And when I'd worked for the Conservative Party, I'd taken a lot of politicians to Camel Laird Shipbuilders.
Yeah.
This very famous shipbuilder in Liverpool, probably one of the most famous shipbuilders in the world. 200-year-old shipbuilder, built thousands of ships, some of the most famous ships ever to sail, Mauritania and Ark Royals and lots of warships. And that was really my big break into maritime. I didn't know anything about maritime, really, despite the fact I come from Liverpool, which is often a good place to start. If you don't know anything about an industry, you don't know anything about a subject, then you can really sort of throw yourself into it. And I went to meet the boss of the shipyard, John Siverett, who was an incredible entrepreneur, really amazing person, had been an apprentice, worked his way up. And he sort of said to me when I first went to meet him, he said, "Is this your business?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Is it your mortgage on the line?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you'll make it a success then, won't you?" And he actually paid me 3 months up front in advance, the only client to ever have...
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
He must have taken pity on me. I think at that point we only had a couple of clients, literally just set up in business, and we get this iconic maritime business. And so that was the moment that my business really started to take off. And we got into the maritime industry. And as soon as I walked into that shipyard, I was just hooked on the maritime industry, because you walk into a shipyard and you see warships being built, you see nuclear submarines being built, just the spectacle of it. It's just awesome, Mike. And it resonated with me. And I felt a bit like when Sam Phillips, the famous record producer, Sun Records in Memphis, heard Howling Wolf for the first time, and he said, "This is where the soul of a man never dies." And I felt that about maritime. You go into a 200-year-old shipbuilder, and the sense of greatness, the sense of camaraderie, and it was very different to politics. There was a brotherhood at Camel Laird, this sort of sense of team, and we're doing something great, and we're growing, and we're contributing to society. We're generating jobs. We're creating work for small to medium-sized companies. We've got this big supply chain, and everyone's in this together. And I found it incredibly motivating, a lot down to John, the boss of Camel Laird, because he was such a passionate person. He was such a real leader. And also his number two, Linton Roberts, to me, they were a bit like Lennon and McCartney. Very different styles, but very inspiring people, very talented people, much better than I was. And that's where I would say to any, young person listening to this, someone wants to go into business, get around people who are better than you. Get around people you can learn from. And I was very, very lucky to get that work at Camel Laird. And I think we worked there for about 14 years until John stood down. And, we just learned so much. The business grew so fast. It's like 50 million, 60 million, 100 million, 150 million. And in that time, we started picking up work with their supply chain. So we were working with electrical contractors, insulation contractors, valve contractors. I mean, all this stuff that I really knew nothing about beforehand. But I just loved how passionate they were, and, loved to tell their story. And we then started going to the international trade fairs. So in the maritime industry, there's amazing international trade fairs in Oslo and Athens and Hamburg and places. So we started going to these international trade fairs, and then we started picking up this mega work, like in the Middle East. And I'd never been to the Middle East before. And we started working with this huge shipyard in Oman.
Oh, wow.
This
Like
is
a tanker?
2014. No, they were like shipbuilders. Ship
Oh,
repairers.
shipbuilders.
This massive shipyard. I mean, I thought Camel Laird was amazing, but I went to see Oman Dry Dock in the middle of nowhere in Duckham, this port called Duckham on the Arabian Gulf. They drove us out there from Muscat through the mountains to this remote desert wilderness. And there's just suddenly this vast shipyard appears. And that's where I really got the taste for exporting. So subsequent to that, we became much more of an international maritime specialist agency. So when I first started out, 2007, we were just a generalist PR firm. And then, it's the path of least resistance, isn't it? We ended up becoming a maritime specialist because that's just where the business was. And it's a good thing to be a specialist because, you develop a lot of knowledge that can be applied to different clients. But, we then started working in Lithuania, China, in India, in America. So we became an international company. So today, we've worked with ports, we've worked with shipbuilders, we've worked with repair yards, we've worked with classification societies, flag states, shipping lines, probably 100 different maritime businesses. So, now we're a specialist, and in 2022, we expanded the business to Chicago, which is obviously where we are now, because we'd been growing in America and my wife's parents live here in Chicago. So we had the opportunity. It's like one of those opportunities, once in a lifetime opportunity to come and live in America. So that sort of brought us to the present day. And now we're trying to grow in the American maritime industry as well as the international maritime industry.
So, for young people who are watching this one, you mentioned your mentor, and I hear a lot from like different people that, like finding your mentor will basically help you a lot in industry that you want to pursue. So this guy basically was the guy who put you on that position when you felt uncomfortable, and then he kind of like shifted your vision, your habits. Is that how that happened, or?
I think a good mentor will challenge you because obviously, you've got to get better. And I say this to you, I'm 50 now. And I think how much I've grown since moving to America in 2022. For any young person watching this, listening to this, you've got to commit to learning. You've got to commit to lifelong learning because there's just so many skills you need to develop, and you've got to get better yourself. And there's that advice: "Oh, fake it till you make it" in business. And when I set up in business, I sort of thought I knew what I was doing, and to an extent, I knew what I was doing from a media relations point of view. But I had an awful lot to learn about managing people, about managing business partners, about running a business, about all the legality, all the finance, and, managing relationships with clients. So often with Len Collinson, I would ring him up. For years, I would ring him up or go and see him and say, Len, I've got this challenge. What do you think? How do you think I should handle this? And, he was very good because he'd always say to me, my door's always open. Which is amazing, really, that he even took time to help me. But he wanted to help me, and he helped a lot of people. But he was very blunt. So sometimes what he'd say to you would really sting. Whether that's right, whether that's wrong, I don't know. But he was a formidably intelligent person, and he had a track record of pulling himself up by his bootstraps from nothing and becoming this multimillionaire with a very successful business. And so he's a very instinctive person. I'd ask him a question, he just straight away, he'd give this sort of illuminating answer. I was sort of aware, I am so far away from his level.
From that guy.
I was so far away from that level.
I see.
And it was the same with John Siverett at Camel Laird. Those two people probably had the biggest impact on me because their styles are very different to my styles. But they were both very intelligent and very challenging. And I remember sometimes I'd write something for John at Camel Laird, and he'd say something like, this isn't your best. And I'd be like, huh? And so it was a bit like, I don't know, how the Chess Brothers used to record Chuck Berry or Muddy Waters or something here in Chicago. They'd be goading them.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be like, okay, you don't think this is any good? Well, I'm gonna show you. I'm really gonna put my back into this.
Yeah.
And also with John and Len, they both used to go through the press releases with a fine tooth comb. So I knew they were going to read them.
All right, guys, I just want to do a quick reminder that this podcast has only one sponsor, lifetime sponsor, and it's my agency, Bace Agency, where we're dedicated to deliver the best service to our clients. So if you're looking for software solutions such as websites, CRM systems, backend, or some sort of like APIs, you always can go to us. Or if you're looking for design, your brand books, logos, or just a simple, designs of your some sort of posters, it's always, and we know how to combine business, technology, and creativity in our solutions. So let's keep it going.
So I would really make the effort when I was writing. I'd really put my back into it. And sometimes, and this is really a great leader, if it justified it, they would say, this is excellent. And then you'd feel like, $1 million.
Yeah.
But it's not always easy to find people like that. I was very lucky to get into their orbit because they were exceptional people. John still is an exceptional person. Len sadly now passed away, but so the advice is, even if it's working for free or not very much money, if people can train you, it's like when I trained as a journalist and I wasn't getting paid really any money, but it was like formal British journalist elite training. So, I was getting training in college and then training on the job on newspapers. And as I say, that was like the Beatles in Hamburg for me because I had to learn how to play guitar properly. I had to learn how to write properly. And sometimes in my career, I've met people who say, oh yeah, well, I was traveling when you were working working as a journalist. So I was traveling around Thailand and stuff. And I used to feel a bit envious of that. But now I realize that that time was very, very well spent for me because I used that skill every day.
So your 20s basically, right?
That was the bedrock of my training. And I used that skill every day. And okay, it's taken me a long time. And it probably took me 7 years until I became an exporting business from when I first set up in 2007. But the skills got me there in the end. And I was probably more, if I'm honest, I was more experienced, more emotionally mature to be able to handle that experience. So I would say with young people, don't feel like you need to go into the top job straight away. And I think there is that sense that, I want to be working for a top organization from the word go. What you actually need is great training and to develop a skill and do something you're passionate about. And then you can work your way up to a higher position and a top organization.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I was ready for it when I was younger. I had to learn some skills. I had to mature. And I felt the same when I was started running my business. I had so much to learn personally and professionally, but I'm glad that I started in 2007. But how old was I then? About 32, 33. But it was a lot of times very difficult because, I made mistakes, made errors, and, I had to learn, and some of those were painful mistakes. And so I had to learn from those. So sometimes, once you get the skills and you're in your 30s, you do want to start your business.
And
But don't think that it's going to be easy, because you've got to learn how to do it. You've got to learn how to manage people. You've got to learn how to be in business with other people. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does work out. And so, get your skills in your 20s, learn at other people's expense, if you like. Try and get really good quality work. Try and get good mentors. And then when you set up in business, realize you're not going to know it all. So there's going to be some pain along the way. But through the pain, you find your sort of your true self, and you learn by giving yourself more responsibility.
I see. So the framework that you're kind of building. So first, your 20s, from your 20 to 30, you're trying to take as much as you can from your job, learn as much as you can, develop those skills. And then when you're like 30, you can start your business.
Yeah.
And let's say, try to find the clients, try to talk to those people who you work with. Maybe they can refer you to somebody. And my question is, so in our nowadays, in our world today, a lot of young people, I would say, poisoned by social medias, and they see all those like influencers who reach success in their 20s. They're like 21, 22. They're like driving those Lambos, Ferraris, having a nice life, like vacation. And especially here in US, the problem with the credit cards, a lot of people living, like in a debt,
Yeah.
So,
I think it's BS, Mike. You need to learn a skill, and you need to develop emotional maturity. And the Lambo lifestyle, whatever it is, that can wait. You need, business is a serious thing. And my experience in maritime and engineering, you're dealing with mature, conservative people that are expecting competence. So forget all of this BS on Instagram or whatever. Learn a skill, learn responsibility, learn the core skills of business. So you've got to have a good product. You've got to be good at what you do. You've got to be competent at what you do. You've got to learn about managing people. You've got to learn about being in business with people, because business is a team game. So you need to develop relationships. You need to be good at developing relationships. You need to be able to influence people. And these are not skills that you're born with. And they're not skills that you have at the age of 18 or 22 necessarily. You have to get out there, and you have to, maybe make some mistakes, get around, people who are older and wiser than you, and learn and develop and understand. I'm sitting here age 50, and I'm telling you how much I've grown in the last few years by taking a risk to come and set up here in America. And that's necessitated me learning a lot of new skills and honing my skills. So if I'm still learning at 50, then you sure as hell learning in your early 20s.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think, a lot of the time young people are like, I'm not sure what I want to do. And, there's this sort of hand wringing. And you don't want to spend a lot of time hand wringing. You gotta do what you're passionate about. And I was lucky that politics I enjoyed, the media and writing I enjoyed. And then it was by accident rather than design, I walked into a shipbuilder, and that was where I found a home for me. That resonated with me. So you just got to put yourself out there and try and get lots of experience. And it isn't always easy to make the breakthroughs. You've got to be very persistent. And I think with a lot of people, they give up. You know, when you're young, you sort of get disheartened. And I've seen that a lot, that people get disheartened. And one of the things you need in small business, more than anything else, is resilience. Because it's totally naive to think that every client is going to work out, every employee is going to work out, everyone's going to fall at your feet. Is that what people think? You think you're going to get a Lamborghini lifestyle because suddenly they get all these clients? It's not going to work like that. You're going to have setbacks, you're going to have successes, but the whole thing about business is that it's a journey, and you've got to enjoy the journey. And it's like a ship crossing the Atlantic, like the Mayflower or something. It's going to be a difficult crossing, and there's going to be times where you do get a setback, and that's where you've got to stay positive. You can't be down for too long. You've got to stay positive and think, I've got a great service here. I'm fired up for this. I want to do this. And I think it was Steve Jobs who said, if after 3 days looking in the mirror, you're thinking, I really don't want to do this, then maybe you need to change. But you've got to have resilience, Mike. And I think I've found that to be one of the most challenging things. But I am, very passionate about what I do. So, I'm driven to do it. But I do see a lot of people, they get too down. And, we're all attracted to people's vibration in business. And if you go into a new business pitch and you're not on your A game, you got to be on your A game. Otherwise, you're not going to win the business. And that's the reality. That's the reality of what you're playing at. It's like in any sport. If a team goes out and they're not motivated and they're fed up and they're not getting along with each other, confidence is low, resilience is low, they're going to lose. And it's the same in business. So you have to develop a resiliency. And one thing that I wish I'd done when I was younger in business was go to the gym more. Because now I'm in the gym 4 times a week and have been since probably 2019. But for the first 10 years of the business, I really didn't prioritize my health. I just used to work all the time. And yeah, I enjoy work, but you've got to look after yourself as well. And what I've found with going to the gym is that you feel better, you feel stronger mentally and physically. And okay, don't always want to go to the gym. But the difference between successful and unsuccessful people is that successful people will do the things that unsuccessful people don't like doing. And they don't like doing them either. But true. They do it. And I mean, I quite like rituals. So, I like to wake up and, drink my water, drink a liter of water, take my vitamin pill, do a meditation. If you told me when I set up in business that I was going to do a meditation every morning, I would have absolutely laughed at you. There's a bit of time to do a meditation. But actually, meditation is like a mental fitness, getting yourself in the right frame of mind for all of that resilience and getting yourself to the right vibrational frequency, which again is like a phrase that I probably would have laughed at, but it's true. So you've got to look after yourself mentally, you've got to look after yourself physically, because you've got to be at peak performance. I think I've run this business for 17 years now. 17 years. And I've still got to run it. My kids are pretty young, so I've still got to run it for another 20 years. So, for young people listening to this, realize this is a marathon that you're running here.
Pretty long marathon.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. So give yourself the time to learn, but, realize, you're not just in business for a few years. You're in business for decades. And one error I've seen people make is they overspend. So they start a business, they start getting some money in, and they see money in the bank account. They say, oh, I've got money. They start spending it. And it's like, do you not realize that that money is needed for tax? I mean, certainly in England, I saw people spending the corporation tax, spending the value-added tax. They're just stupid with money. They're like Dracula in a blood bank. So you need to have financial discipline. That's absolutely critical. So you can't go out and be blowing money on, the Lambo. You might have to accept that, you're going to have a modest car. You're going to have a modest flat. You're going to have modest offices. That doesn't sound very glamorous, but that's what you're going to have. That's what we did. We grew slowly. It wasn't, Len used to say to me, very few people make a lot of money quickly. I said, well, what should we be growing at then, Len? He said, well, 10% a year. And, that's not the Lambo lifestyle.
Not at all.
So we've had to accrue money, over years. We've had to invest in property and that kind of thing to get to the position where I can expand the business to Chicago in America and underwrite that. And I'm just so pleased that my wife and I have, being sensible with money, because that's enabled us to have this incredible experience of being in America now and to have an exporter business. But it's taken a lot of years to get there.
I see. Well, so I have a question for you. So you said that you moved 2 years ago, right, to the Chicago.
Yeah.
And being 48 and moving to another country with your kids, with your wife, even if you have your wife's parents here, it's really brave move. It's really brave move in case of you have to know that you have something here, but you don't have. So you have to acquire new clients, find new people, maybe, establish those relationships that you had back to England and you don't have here. So how and why?
Well, we already had clients.
Okay.
So, we're an international boutique maritime PR firm. So our client base is international. And so for a lot of our clients, stayed with us when we moved to America, and we already had clients in America. That's not to say that we weren't taking a calculated risk. We were. But you know what? Do I want to get to the age of 70 or 80 and think, I could have gone to live in the greatest country in the world and I didn't do it? And, my wife and I just felt, we have to take this opportunity. This is something that we've worked for 20 years or more. And, I love America. So I love American culture. I love American art. I love American music. I love American architecture. I love the attitude of America. It's much more aligned to my attitude, which is self-sufficiency, running my own business. And I wanted to give it a go. I wanted to learn. So whether I'm 48, who cares? I want to learn. I want the experience. And I've had 2 of the best years of my life here, and I've learned so much. People like, I know Ken Burns, the documentary maker. So I never heard of Ken Burns. And I've watched virtually all of his documentaries on the Lewis and Clark trail, on Vietnam. So much learning. And so to me, it's the greatest privilege of my life to be here. I think when I was walking up here, I saw somewhere was a Marquette Legal Services. Now, if you're in the maritime industry like me, you will admire Marquette, because Marquette discovered Chicago in 1673. Jesuit priests sailing down the Mississippi, upper Mississippi, for the first time with a group of fellow travelers, wanting to discover the Mississippi, trying to find this trade route to China. I mean, I'd never heard of this.
Me
And
either.
and it's like, this is up there with Magellan's circumnavigation of the globe in 1522, with Columbus discovering America in 1492, Marquette and Julier's expedition through the Great Lakes, all the way down the Mississippi to Arkansas and then back, and they discovered Chicago. They discovered what became Chicago.
The city.
And I'd never heard this story. I'd never heard the Lewis and Clark story. I didn't really know enough about the Vietnam War or Teddy Roosevelt or Abraham Lincoln. And I mean, I could go on and on and on. Georgia O'Keeffe, Frederick Remington. By taking the risk and taking the opportunity, suddenly your life improves. You become illuminated with this. And I've been very fortunate as well, because in Maritime you find yourself traveling around. So been to Memphis, been to Charleston, been to Houston, been to New York, so it's been, and Florida and places. So it's been so enriching. So you should always take the opportunities and a calculated risk. I think Richard Branson says, you should take a calculated risk. It's not just risk.
It's just a blind shot, right?
It's not just a blind. And actually, Branson says about Trump, the thing about Trump is a risk taker. So whatever you think of Trump, he's president for the second time, and he's probably the most consequential politician of our age. And he's enabled that by being a risk taker. So you want to take risks. And I've taken big risks when I look back at it. And some of those risks have been probably more than I should have done. But that's led me to where I am today. So certainly in terms of coming to America, that was much more of a calculated risk, and one that has been one of the greatest things we've ever done. And Mike, America is about innovation, and that's one thing I've really learned since being here. So there was very famous British journalist called Harry Evans, who's now died, who came to live in New York. He used to edit the Sunday Times. And he's written some of the best books ever about America, the American Century, and They Built America, or They Made America. And They Made America is a big coffee table book, superbly written. And it's about all of the innovators, like Edison, the Wright brothers, all the people who invented radio and Bell Labs and Google and eBay, and going right back to the inventors or the innovators of the steam engine, Fulton and Shreve, who invented, who really pioneered steam-powered vessels on the Mississippi and on the Hudson. And, if you think about it, other countries, whether it's China, Australia, Argentina, South Africa, they had a similar landmass to America, but America transformed itself from a rural to an industrial nation much faster than any of them, because it has this passion for innovation. And I think a lot of that has been obviously driven by immigrants. And if I look at my mother-in-law, she was one of those Eastern European immigrants, and I know a lot came from Ireland and Italy and Germany, particularly in that later 1870, 1920 period. And they were of an awkward, questioning disposition. They were the risk takers. They were the ones who were prepared to start a new life in America. And for a lot of them, they were fleeing, poverty or anti-Semitism and pogroms. And they couldn't afford to fail. So if you look at some of the industrial cities like Cleveland, Chicago, the people who built the railways, the people who built the steel factories, who industrialized America, those people they're like my mother-in-law. They just were not prepared to fail. They're so driven. And they thrived in this egalitarian, entrepreneurial environment. And that, to me, is the essence of American greatness. And that's what brought me here. And you think today, America is still the preeminent economy in the world. And it's growing. I think it was 2/5 of the G7 economy in 1990. It's now half.
Yes.
It's home to the vast majority of AI companies. It's home to the main tech companies. It's got the majority of the best universities. I think Amazon spends more on its R&D than the entirety of British industry. I think the tech companies are worth more than Britain, Germany, France, and some of the other European nations combined.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And America has this entrepreneurial, and of course, home to the rocket industry as well. And that's very important in the maritime industry because SpaceX has the best satellites for ships. But, America, to me, is the most exciting country in the world, is the most entrepreneurial country in the world, and that is the essence of its greatness. But it's now been challenged more by China, and so it still can't rest on its laurels. And if you think about the Lewis and Clark trip, which was 1805 when President Jefferson bought the Louisiana Territory, which became about 16 different states from Napoleon, and the Lewis and Clark Trail went to explore that. And they didn't know what was there. And I think there is a golden thread from Lewis and Clark to the moon landings that America does things that other countries don't even dream about. There is that willingness to do the seemingly impossible and vast risk. I mean, you explored the Louisiana Purchase, how many of them, 30 of them or something? They didn't know what was there. They didn't know if they were going to get massacred by Native Americans. Going to the moon? I mean, the risk of that is just unbelievable. Even today, the vantage point from how many decades away, it's still probably the greatest achievement in human civilization to go to the moon, arguably. So America did that. And so that is where, to me, from the maritime industry point of view, maritime needs to tap into that again. I mean, America, from a maritime perspective, has been a great innovator in maritime, pioneered the steam engine, Malcolm McLean invented containerization, which changed the world, created globalization. The Kaiser shipyards during the Second World War, they were building like a ship in 24 hours. In 24 freaking hours. And people saying, it can't be done. It's like, 40 days or 70 days. They're building these Liberty ships, which, by the way, were fundamental to the Battle of the Atlantic and saving Europe from Nazi tyranny. The guy Kaiser, he was like, well, we can do this. And so, and you see that in Musk. Musk has that attitude of, you say it can't be done, it can be done. And in maritime, that is very much needed because at the moment, America doesn't build many ships, maybe 10 ships a year. It's very expensive to build them here in America. And there's this new Ships Act that wants to build 250 new ships in the next 10 years. If America is going to do that, it's going to have to tap into the Thomas Edison, the Lewis and Clark, the Kaiser shipyards. Dare I say Elon Musk? I think Elon Musk is going to have a big say in how, if that legislation is passed and 250 ships have to be built, they can't cost 3 or 4 times more than the market average, which presently they do in America. So they're going to have to find a better way of doing it. And a lot of people in the industry say to me, it's not going to be possible. But I think that sort of neglect the essence of American innovation, which is anything is possible.
So we're in that draft and legislation act. We're talking about that United States are trying compete. They're trying to compete with China because we know that I saw this yesterday in Wall Street Journal that China is building 78% of ships that are like container carriers.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's going to be hard. And how can we because in the United States, labor is more expensive.
Yep.
We're trying to, pursue those labor goals. What I mean by that, we're trying not to push people really hard, giving them, vacations, giving them benefits. And in China, they're apparently not doing that. And this is, I think, partially how they're able to build that fast. And especially, I saw this article, the way how they build, they have those huge facilities. And, when you have this manufacturing process set, it's way easier. Yeah. And in the United States, we don't have it now. As you mentioned, we build 10 ships?
What I would say is, America's looking to build 250 ships over 10 years.
Is it possible?
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, 250 ships over 10 years. I mean, these Chinese shipyards are building like 80 ships a year.
Okay.
So, it's about America. Well, it's really about American security. I mean, that's what Trump is about. So Panama Canal, Greenland, this is about American maritime security. So building 250 new ships, I think that's going to get passed by Congress. Mm-hmm. I think Trump is going to be very supportive of it. So it's eminently possible. I know a lot of people would say it isn't, but I think it is. But American shipyards do need to find a way of doing it more efficiently. I don't know what that necessarily is. I know that Del Toro, I think under the Biden administration, he was doing a lot of research. He was going to Korean shipyards, looking at how they build. And obviously there's a lot of foreign-owned shipbuilders operating in the US, from BAE to Fincantieri, so to the Hanwha Group, I think it is, Korean shipbuilder now running the Philly shipyard. And I think what Del Toro was saying is that there needs to be more competition between the yards to drive efficiencies. But I think if you've got somebody like Musk in the mix, and you look at how Musk drove innovation and slashed cost out of the rocket industry, I think that's the way it's going to go in shipbuilding. I think it's a good thing that Trump is very, very interested in maritime, because maritime is so often, in the shadows, doing its thing. There was all this sea blindness. Public's unaware of maritime carrying 90%, 80% of visible goods. And we're so dependent on maritime, and Trump is highlighting that now because China has become this maritime superpower. It's from seemingly nowhere, like in 2000, where I think it built less than 9% or something of ships. It's now building more than 50%. And that presents a security issue for America. So America's finally waking up to this. And it's not going to be easy, but I think it's doable. And as I say, 250 new ships over 10 years. Well, some Chinese shipyards individually are building 70 ships in a year. So, it's got to be possible, I think.
Well, so we know that building ships require a lot of metal and aluminum or aluminium. And
yeah, aluminium, that's how I know it, yeah.
So, and we know that they impose 25% tariff on aluminum and on metals, and it's going to be, so America by themselves, we produce metal and aluminum, but majority of that metals goes from China. And this is, I believe, how they're able to build those ships, because they have this source right there in China. But in our case, in American case, I heard this and I saw the article that producing metal here and aluminum is so expensive. So what I'm thinking about, you were saying about Elon Musk. And so what I hear from you, we basically need one more Elon Musk, but in maritime industry.
Look, nobody says it's easy, and I don't know what they're going to do about the steel issue and whether it's too expensive or not. The key is to find a way, and I think Del Toro, who was in charge of sort of shipping under Biden, he started the process, and so the Ships Act was announced in December 2024, and that's a serious piece of cross-party legislation. So the conversation is now being had, and I think last night it was announced that there's going to be a new shipbuilding office. So the conversation is being had, and now the difficult sort of questions need to be addressed. But this is the country that got the Apollo 13 back to Earth, and so failure, as they say, is not an option. And that's the American, at its best, that's the American mentality. So you've got to find a way. And, whether you like Trump or not, he is an entrepreneur. He is a disruptor. And he's looking for new answers to get stuff done. And so for maritime businesses, we're in this sort of new era where maritime is much higher profile. And as an industry, we have to get behind that, particularly here in the Midwest, because the Midwest got a lot of manufacturing businesses, marine equipment manufacturers. It's got shipyards with Fincantieri and Fraser and some others. And we want to be bringing a lot of that work here to the Great Lakes, to the Midwest. The Midwest is the industrial heartland of America, but we got to get our act together. And as you know, one of the things that I do is I help to run the Chicago Propeller Club, which is maritime industry networking, and that exists to recycle opportunities within the maritime community here, raise awareness of maritime and share opportunities. And with the new Ships Act, with Trump giving maritime a much bigger profile, this is an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to encourage people to go into maritime careers, to see it maritime as an exciting industry that offers jobs, exciting jobs for people of all academic abilities, for people across industries. And it's likely to create a lot of work, a lot of additional work. So if there's a lot of ships being built for the supply chain, that's fantastic for those of us in the supply chain, whether it's engineering companies, whether it's professional services companies. So this is potentially very, very good for us. But certainly in the Midwest, we've got to get behind this legislation and showcase our capabilities. I think a big thing for the Great Lakes in particular is to encourage more freight into the Great Lakes. At the moment, only it's 50% capacity and declining. We've got to encourage more freight forwarders to use the Great Lakes, whether that's Canada and America or even Europe. Transport your cargo direct to the heartland of America using the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Great Lakes, rather than dumping all of the stuff at an East Coast port where it can be very congested, and then railing it to the Midwest. We've got to champion the Midwest so we get a share of the Ships Act pie, if you like.
So you mentioned that, the amount of ships that are basically coming from, let's say, Europe or Canada declining like 50%. And you know about Panama, right? And yesterday it got announced that they struck the deal. So BlackRock bought 43, I believe, ports from this Hong Kong company.
Yeah, Hutchinson, yeah.
Yes, for $22.8 billion. It's a Panama Channel. So those ports are pretty close to the Panama Channel.
Yeah.
And so it kind of looks like America betting on, shipbuilding inside the America, but at the same time, they are betting on this Panama Channel that is being the main route for those like cargoes, military ships, etc. And my question is, doesn't that look like they're trying to, they're basically trying to move attention from our ports, American ports, to the more like Panama Channel, and go here, use this one, and especially again Canada, they're being really not happy about what's going on now. Europe either, and there is a high chance that they're not gonna use Great Lakes.
I think the Panama Canal is about maritime security. The amount of American freight that's going, or naval vessels going through the Panama Canal, I don't know if it's that much, really, but it's about maritime security. So America is sort of asserting itself, and we're seeing that the president is a negotiator, and he's a brilliant negotiator, and he creates leverage. So I think what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of disruption, and I think things will settle down, but we're seeing a lot of disruption because he's trying to negotiate, get leverage. It's difficult to see how it's going to pan out right now, but I think the maritime industry has been around for millennia. Okay, it's not like the tech industry.
Yeah,
it's been around for about 100 years. The maritime industry has been around for hundreds of years in a serious commercial way. So we're used to sort of rocky weather, and it will always be there because there is no other option for transporting liquid bulk, dry bulk, whether it's cement, whether it's heavy equipment, whether it's fuel, wood, all of the multitude of stuff that we need, cars, vehicles. The only way you can transport this stuff is by ocean. It can't be put on a plane. So the maritime industry is always going to be there. Always going to be there. And that's one thing I wanted to say to your viewers and listeners. This is an exciting industry that is at the heart of exploration, because it was seafarers who discovered America. It was seafarers who discovered the Pacific. So it's an exciting industry. It's an industry of exploration. And it has danger. If you're going to cross the Atlantic, it's still a difficult, dangerous thing to do. And it needs the best minds. I think I was saying to you the other day, we need to, as an industry, to attract the best minds to come and work in maritime. The present day Thomas Edison's, Nikola Tesla, Westinghouse, Carnegie. We need these best minds to come and work in maritime, because maritime has to decarbonize. It could be responsible for like 1/5 of carbon emissions by 2050, unless it can decarbonize the types of fuels it uses. It needs to embrace AI, autonomous ships, electric ships, digitization. It's really exciting what is happening in maritime, and really difficult. We need difficult engineering challenges, because it's one thing to, say, electrify a car or a truck, but some of these ships have got like 120,000 horsepower. 120,000 horsepower. So trying to find an alternative fuel with that amount of energy density is really difficult. I mean, if you were going to, at the moment, if you're going to make one of those container ships you talked about electric, every single container would have to be a battery to power the thing.
Is it that
There's
bad?
120,000 horsepower. Actually, one of our clients over at K Energy is a marine battery manufacturer, and they've just put the biggest ever marine batteries onto two Brittany ferries, and these batteries will work in combination with a diesel hybrid engine. But these are like fascinating engineering challenges, and I don't think the maritime industry is very good at promoting itself, very good at inspiring young people to work in the maritime industry. And that's something we've really got to tackle, because I think today, and you can tell me different, young people want to work in tech.
That's true, definitely.
Because that's where it seems to be happening, man.
Yeah.
So you got Musk and Bezos and Branson with this space race. And they're getting lots of headlines, and it's lots of PR, and it's exciting, and it's great PR. What is Maritime doing? Maritime's just doing its thing. And it's not as exciting as, what about when Columbus discovered America? That's pretty exciting. Or when Magellan discovered the Pacific. And when he got through the Magellan Straits in South America, he thought he was going to get to the Spice Islands in days or weeks. And it took him like 2 or 3 months. And they were like dying of scurvy and stuff. They're fighting the natives. And, it was extraordinary, that stuff. And we need to package the heritage of maritime and sell it. In actual fact, I've been wanting to see a Magellan Netflix sort of series. And they made one. And I thought it was absolutely diabolical. It was so boring. I was like, how can you make this boring? The story of Magellan is so mind-blowing. To circumnavigate the globe in 1522, it took them something like 2 years to do it. They're like massacres and mutinies. Magellan himself was killed in the Philippines. I just couldn't believe that this series managed to make such a riveting story so dull. But the point I'm trying to make is that the maritime industry is one of the most exciting industries in the world. I think it has the most riveting history of any industry. And it has big challenges today that I think matter to the globe. Decarbonisation being a big one. Digitization, autonomous ships. And we're lucky. We've got clients who are doing those very things. They're innovating autonomous ships. It's great to work on, but we've got to get that message out there. We're very good at talking to ourselves in the maritime industry. There's a huge, abundant trade press and all these trade fairs around the world, but it's always the same people working within the industry, and we need to communicate outside. We need to be communicating to the general public better. And that is one of the biggest challenges that the industry faces, without a doubt.
So you're definitely a really interesting person, and you have a lot of knowledge in maritime industry. And I know that you have a book.
Yeah.
The book, and what is that book about? And, for young people who are trying kind of like pursue and navigate.
Here's the book.
Yeah. Can you show that one more time?
Yeah. I'm writing an updated version at the moment, an American version called Shores of Freedom, which is proving to be quite difficult in some ways because the policies are changing so fast that the book's going to be out of date very quickly. So the book is really about how companies can use public relations better. My experience has been over the years that a lot of the times when we've been brought in by a maritime business, they haven't used PR before, so they don't really know how to manage it. So we've learned a lot over the years, and it's really to say to them, it's very important that you use PR in a serious way, because PR is about your reputation, and every business survives or falls on its reputation. So you have to communicate what you stand for, the quality of your work. You have to communicate that consistently. And if you want to grow your business, You can't scale up by word of mouth alone. If you want to scale up at speed, you have to reach a mass audience. And that's what PR can do. It can help you get to a mass audience. A bit like a ship leaving an island. Say you've got a business and the island is your existing contacts. You can only grow so much. So PR is like a ship that can take you off your island of existing contacts to discover new continents of new clients, new possibilities, new opportunities. So it's there to help you reach a mass audience. But in the book, it goes into a lot of detail of crisis management, of strategy, of understanding what success looks like, of understanding if you're going to invest in PR, and you want it to create a result, sales or influence, then it can't exist in a vacuum. You've got to bolt that on with networking, joining trade associations, attending trade fairs. It's part of a bigger canvas, and you need to knit it all together. And that's when you start maximizing the investment in PR. But PR is very important because it's there to listen. I always say, listen before you speak in PR. What is the industry saying? What is the mood of the industry? And you want to harmonize your message. If the purpose of PR is to influence people and encourage them to trust you more and ultimately deepen their relationship with you, then it's important that you are reflecting their message in your messaging and doing it authentically. And that's one of the big messages of the book as well. I hate greenwashing. I hate purpose washing. Don't do that, because you'll get pilloried in the media. If you say you're going green and you're not going green, you'll get pilloried in the media sooner or later. So be authentic. Listen. Listening is the most important thing, I think, in PR. Listen before you speak. Harmonize with your influence, with people you want to influence. And have clear values. I think more and more now business, young people, you're talking about young people want to work for a business that is making a positive difference in the world. And I think back to a lot of our clients, like the battery maker, AYK Energy. They're very driven to decarbonize maritime. So it's really inspiring to work with them. They're really innovating. They're like Edison and Tesla, Nikola Tesla, or even modern day Tesla with the cars. They are really innovating. They're really changing the world for the better. And that gets me out of bed in the morning, that what I'm doing is making a difference in its own way. And I know a lot of our clients have employed apprentices, and they've employed, they've got a big supply chain. Let's say with the shipyards, they've got a big supply chain. So they're making a big difference to their local economy and the national economy. And that is a purpose in itself, that you're driven to do good in society. That matters. If you can help young people get good quality job and good quality training, we've spoken about the importance of training.
Yes.
So if you can, I think particularly in the shipyard industry, if a lot of people who become apprentices, maybe they're not academic high flyers, but they're suited to more, working in a practical environment, and they get an apprenticeship. So instead of, being unemployed, they get an apprenticeship. They can sit at the family dinner table and they can feel like they're being respected, that they're growing, they're maturing emotionally, they're earning money, they're developing a skill that they can take all over the world. And so, businesses can really make a difference. Maritime businesses can really make a difference to society. And one of the things we're trying to do with the Propeller Club is, encourage people on the south side of Chicago to go into maritime, where there's a lot of unemployment and social deprivation. Encourage them to work in the maritime or work in the port, and develop careers.
I see. So guys, all links for Ben's book, you can buy it on Amazon. You can also listen.
Audible.
Audible. Yeah. So all links for Ben's book and for Ben's LinkedIn gonna be below in the description. Thank you, Ben, for this podcast. That was really exciting. And I think it was exciting for both for young people and people who have experience in maritime industry. We covered a lot of topics. We even went a little bit politically, but I think we have to do that today, because you can't be, this is the country where you're living and you have to have opinion. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Mike.